We are in Exodus chapter 14. We have spoken about the Passover in chapter 12, which is the instructions of what they are supposed to do with the lamb on the 10th of Nisan, and on the 14th, they will slaughter the lamb and they will cook the lamb, and then we eat it on the night of the 15th. And how to do all these things. And then we talked about the firstborn. We talked about the matzah, which is the unleavened bread. And then in chapter 13, they did all this and they left Egypt with the spoils of Egypt. And the word is like, after you've won a war, you take everything from the enemies. And so the Egyptians gave to the Israelites what they asked for, and we were told they were taken by the route of by the way of the wilderness and not by the way of the sea, which I tried to describe to you, and they crossed what we call the Sinai Peninsula. And on foot, they would have at least 600,000 men. And then you add their women, their children, their aged, then all their livestock. And it's a big group of people leaving Egypt. And as they are leaving Egypt, they have spent a couple of days on the journey. And chapter 14 says, say this to the children of Israel, that they turn and camp before, these are names, Pi Hahirot, between Migdol and between the sea, right? Opposite Baal Zephon, right? Baal Zephon. Now, one of the things that I want to say up front is that we see all these names, Migdol, Pi Hahirot. The sea would be the Red Sea. Baal Zephon would be all names that I must say we really don't know where they are. But they are, nevertheless, I believe, somewhere along the east coast of the Sinai Peninsula. And then they were told to camp or to make camp or encamp. Chana from the root word Hanan. Hanan would be grace, right? Chana would be camp. And so whenever they camp around, there will be peace, there will be grace, there will be warmth, and they camp in a circular fashion. And before it, by the sea, would be before the sea. They are not camping on the sea. They are camping beside the sea. And so we have this idea. So let me briefly draw you a possible map, right? A possible map. If this was the way of the sea, and we have the Nile River here, and then what we will have would be the Suez Canal. I'm not drawing in proportion. And so we have the Sinai, we have the Suez, and we have the Aqaba. And they are all part of the Red Sea, okay? And this is the Arabian Peninsula. And then on the way here, we have the Philistines. So what actually happened then? We have Goshen, and they came through the Sinai Peninsula, and I think they probably camped here. After all said and done, this is what we call the way of the wilderness. And so they encamped here, and the encampment would likely be, that they put up their tents here. Okay. And this place, we don't have the name anymore. So just follow me. And what this would mean is that when the time came, they would have crossed the Red Sea here to the other side. And then they do the ronda on this side. And that would be the Arabian Peninsula. All right. So just bear with me. This is a map which you will never find at the back of your Bibles. You would find the traditional view that they went ronda in the Sinai Peninsula, and which means that Mount Sinai is somewhere here. I think Mount Sinai would be somewhere here. But that's my take of it. So follow me that we are now by the sea, and this would be by the sea. Otherwise, there's no other sea that they can camp. Now we're back in chapter 14. And so verse 3, for Pharaoh will say to the children of Israel, they are bewildered by the land. Now, what do you mean they are bewildered? They are confused. They are in confusion. In confusion. And it says, by the land. Why do they say they are confusion by the land and by the land and the wilderness that had closed them in? What this means is this. The Israelites have always been in Goshen. And you know, in Egypt, the land is good, there's lots of water, and they've never been in a wilderness, meaning the desert. And so this is the first time when they left Egypt, they are in the path of the wilderness. And the Pharaoh said, well, you know, the Israelites, I think they're in a disarray. Why? Because you look north, south, east, west, everything looks the same. And then God says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. You remember, once for all, we have to nail this down. The word harden is to make strong. Make strong. And that would mean to make him stubborn. That's all it means. That Pharaoh will be stubborn. Although in chapter 13, he told Moses, go. But now, after he wakes up, after I would think that he has maybe buried his firstborn son, buried all the firstborn animals, the whole of Egypt was in mourning, and after that, he will pursue them and chase them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh. Now, what is the intent here is that God wants to show the Israelites that this is God. He's a living God. Although they have left Egypt, the problem with Pharaoh is not over, and over his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord, and they did so. Now, a lot of people say that, oh, they are ronda in the Sinai Peninsula. I think not, mainly because the Sinai Peninsula belongs to Egypt, has always belonged to Egypt, as far as I can tell from the history books. And so when Pharaoh chased the Israelites, he can only chase the Israelites in Egypt. He will never chase the Israelites outside of Egypt. And he thinks that the Israelite is still in the wilderness in Egypt. And where would that be? The Sinai Peninsula. In verse 5, we read, now it was told that the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, the people has gone away. And so the heart of the Pharaoh and his servants, the chiefs, right, all turned against the people and said, why have we done this? Why have we let Israel go from serving us? Now nobody is going to do this work. And so he made ready his chariot, took his people with him, 600 choice chariots. And they have iron chariots, by the way. It won't break when it crosses the Sinai Peninsula. And all the chariots of Egypt have captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened, made stubborn Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and they chased. Pursue means to chase from behind the children of Israel because they left first. And the children of Israel went out with boldness. And of course, they were really upset. Now that they have buried everyone, they have finished their grief, they said, no, we cannot let Israel go. So Egyptians pursued, chased them from behind with the horses, the chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen, his army, and tried to overtake. Now, verse 9 talks about overtaking. And the word overtaking is to, well, I guess you could say to reach them. Okay? To reach them, to be near them when they are camping by the sea beside Pi Hachirot, before Baal Zephon. And that would be the place where I think it was just next to the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, verse 10 onwards gives us a picture where they are now very scared. Who is they? The children of Israel. So let me just draw you an idea. If they are here at the Gulf of Aqaba, and this is the Sinai Peninsula, they are at this place, which let me just draw this down. They are at this place encamped. And they are facing what we call the Pharaoh, all right? And this is what Pharaoh is doing. Pharaoh is going to cross and come and arrive there, right? And since they are here, they want to reach them and take them back. Now, a couple of things will have to come to mind when we sit back and we are 21st century Bible students, and we need to ask ourselves, when they cross the Sinai Peninsula, which is called the wilderness, everywhere they look means what? North, south, east, and west, they all look the same. And if you follow me to the tour in Egypt, Israel, and Jordan, we will set foot in the Sinai Peninsula so that you can see what it feels like. But what is interesting is, at this point in time, this is what I'm asking you all to think about. This area here. Is there such an area beside the sea, anywhere in the sea, beside the sea, where you have a broad area where you can accommodate over 1 million people with livestock, right? And one of the things I will try to show you on the way to Israel as we drive up this way, that there is an area on the side. It is a site where we will cross over to the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, and there is a land bridge. And we will talk more about it shortly. And so I'm still of the opinion that that's where the Israelites have encamped. So let's come back to verse 10. Pharaoh drew near, they saw them, the Egyptians marched after them, they were very afraid, and they cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, you mean there's no place to bury us in Egypt, that you have to take us to die in the wilderness? That's the first time they make a complaint. And can you imagine if you have seen 10 great miracles, and when you left Egypt, you were carrying all the spoils, the gold, the silver, the cloth, and suddenly you see the Egyptians, and then you turn around as if nothing happened, that God is not real. This is why have you dealt so with us to bring us out of Egypt? Is not the word we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve Egyptians? It'd be better for us to serve them than we should die in the wilderness. Somehow these people have very short memory. It seems that they have dementia. They cannot remember what God has done. Verse 13. And Moses said to the people, don't be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. What does that mean? Whenever you see the word salvation, that comes from the word Yeshua. Right? Yeshua. Yeshua is salvation. Yeshua. And what does salvation means? Salvation here means deliverance. Right? It means victory. It means to be saved. It means that we have help. All these is the word salvation. But salvation of the Lord. Salvation of the Lord means that God will provide the deliverance, the victory. He will rescue them from the enemies. And he will do this for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will not see them anymore forever. Well, forever is a long time. Remember I said forever means a long, long time. The Lord will fight for you and you shall hold your peace. What do you mean hold your peace? The word peace here is not shalom, by the way. The word peace here means charash. It means keep quiet. It means don't talk anymore. Don't complain anymore. So hold your peace. You are complaining as if nothing had happened. Just know that this is the true and living God. Right? Verse 15. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? You know what is crying here? Crying is call for help. Don't we always call for help? Why does God even say to Moses, why you call for help? Actually, God is trying to tell Moses, you know what to do. You have seen me do all these miracles. So we are moving away from Egypt and we are not going back. So you tell the children of Israel, go forward. Now, this is important. What do you mean go forward? This word go forward doesn't mean to go forward. It means to pull out. To pull out. What do you mean to pull out? Remember they were camping at the side of the sea. So when you camp, you have tent pegs that peg the tent into the ground. And so to pull out means to remove the tent pegs. And it gives you a picture of packing up and we are continuing the journey. That's what it means. But you lift up your rod, raise your rod and extend. Stretch out means extend. Extend your hand over the sea. Over the sea means upon the sea. And split it. Now, this is a very vivid word, very visual, right? Bakar means to break open. So break open the sea. What do you mean break open? Can the sea be broken apart? Well, the picture is you can see the sea water and it will divide into two. When you divide the sea into two, there will be dry land. And the children of Israel will go through the middle of the sea, in between the sea. I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptian, and they shall follow after them, chase them. And I will gain honor over Pharaoh, over his army, his chariots and horsemen, everything that scares the Israelites. The Israelites will have to turn back and say, wow, this is the God that we are following. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. This is to show them 10 miracles is not enough. We have to do the 11th. that I will gain honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Now, this is what I want to point out to you. The angel of God is the one who went before the camp. You know, when they move, they have the pillar of cloud in the day and the pillar of fire at night. So what's happened here? This is what's happening. Okay, let me just draw this again. Aqaba. This is Sinai. And this is Arabia. And so this is where they camp. And here, the pillar of cloud moved from here to the back, so that the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud is in between them and the Egyptians. As long as God is standing between them through the angel of the Lord, these people should not be afraid. They are supposed to march forward. And right now, forward is water. Behind Egyptians. Nowhere you can go. And so the reason why they complain is they are going to die. At least in their eyes, they are going to die in the hands of the Egyptian. But they forgot that after 10 miracles, who is this God they are following? Ahir, Asher, Ahir. He is the ever-living one. That if you follow the ever-living one, you will also live. And so now we read this. The angel of the Lord went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them and stood between them as a pillar of cloud and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of Egyptians and the camp of Israel. So understand that they will never come in between. How can you cross God? They will not. And so there was a cloud and darkness to the one and gave light by night to the other. So at the night time, the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire is together. Interesting. And so if we have the Egyptians, there will be a pillar of cloud. And then we have the pillar of fire. And then we have the Israelites. And then we have the sea. Okay? So what can you actually tell is that all this here, at night, it will be in full darkness. And here we have brightness. See, God divides the brightness and darkness and tells them, you know what? I am your God and I will lead you. And the Egyptians, they will be dark. Why? Because in the Sinai Peninsula, there are no street lights, right? And so they are in the darkness. That's what it means. Back to the text. And so they did not come near each other all that night. It's that night, right? And so in verse 21, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. Now, I want you to remember, it's an east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided, split into two. So the children of Israel went into the middle of the sea that is on dry land, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Okay. Let's look at the picture. Where are they walking? They are walking into the sea. So let me just draw you this little picture. This is Sinai. And you must understand, the Sinai Peninsula, as it goes into the sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, and to the other side, the Arabian Peninsula, was the sea, right? It was the sea. But what we don't realize is this, that the sea is like that. It is a crack in the ground. And this is at least 800 meters. How in the world are you going to cross the Red Sea? And so at the place where the Israelites were camping, that God led them, there is what we call a land bridge that looks like that. And at that place, it is shallower. There are a few of these land bridges all the way up the Dead Sea and all the way up, which means that at the end of the day, the sea would be below them. And then when they walk, it will be on either side. Now also remember, there was the east wind. And so they have to cross the Gulf of Aqaba because the east wind is a very specific wind that blew from the Arabian Peninsula to the Sinai. And God used that wind to dry up the land bridge so that the Israelites can cross. And so when you cross the land bridge, the water is likely to be about maybe 10 meters. 10 meters would be about 30 feet. All right. And so this would be the dry land that the Israelites crossed to the other side. If they didn't cross here, the east wind won't work. And so I believe this story is consistent with my view that they crossed the Aqaba. So as they were crossing, the wall was to them on the right and on the left. Remember, right hand is south, left hand is north. And so they are walking from west to east. So it has to cross the Aqaba that way. And the Egyptians came behind them, chased after them, and went into the middle of the sea after the million of them has crossed to the other side, which is they have to cross at night. And how can they come after them was that after everything was saved, the pillar of cloud would have left. And so the Pharaoh said, hey, they are there. And so they chased. Verse 24. Now it came to pass in the morning watch, which means that they were crossing the whole night. The Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud. And always remember, the pillar of fire and cloud symbolizes God, but it was the angel of the Lord that God says he will move before them. And so the pillar of fire and cloud was removed between the Egyptians. And as the Egyptians ran into the middle of the sea, he took off their chariot wheels and they drove them with difficulty. What do you mean, took off their chariot wheels? How can the chariot move without the wheels? 25. The word took off is to turn aside. Turn aside. Cause the wheel to turn aside. They cannot drive straight. That it is not no more wheels, right? It is to cause the wheels to wobble and they are not rolling straight. Now, what happened? I don't know. Maybe it's coming loose. So they are driving with difficulty. And the word difficulty is kavod, like glory. It means heavy. That as they were driving the chariot, it feels more and more heavy, which means what? They are going slower and slower. And the Egyptians say, oh, let us flee. And the word flee here is let us escape. This is no joke. Israel has the Lord fighting for them against us. And see, the Egyptians know God. they can see that this is God's hands. Verse 26, stretch out your hand over the sea. The waters will come back and will come upon the Egyptians, the chariots, and the horsemen. And so that was what Moses did. And it returned to its full depth, which I think will be about 10 to 20 meters, right? And so the incline would be not steep. So people can easily walk down the sea and walk up the other side. But in the middle of it, the full depth would be about 30 feet. So I don't think they can swim in the chariots. And so the Egyptians were running away, trying to escape. God overthrew. Verse 27, overthrew means to shake off. Shake off or shake out. And that's the intent. And that's a picture of shaking them apart. So how does the shaking happen? Well, 28 says the water returned and covered the chariot. So this was the water falling on them, the horsemen and all the army that came into the sea after or behind the Israelites. Okay. And not much as one of them remained. So everybody died in the army of the Pharaoh. But the children of Israel walked on the land in the middle of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them. So this is to tell them, when the children of Israel walked, it was fine, dry land, no problem. And the walls were there. They could see the sea, and it would be a scary sight. But they went safely across. Now, what we saw was that the chariot wheels, right, took off their chariot wheels. And we talk about waters returning. And I think when the Egyptians went into the sea, I think the water has started to come back, and the sea bed or the sea floor that was once dry is now wet. It may become muddy, and they are not moving straight, and that's what they're doing, and they're getting stuck in the middle of the sea. They can't go back. They can't move forward. And then the waters came upon them. Verse 30. The conclusion of the picture. And the Lord saved. And this word is Yosha. Yosha. And comes from the word Yasha. Maybe Yasha would be a good word. Yasha or Yosha. And was the same root word for Yeshua. That God saved, delivered them, liberate them, and make them victorious without them fighting the Egyptians. And that is what they show. That God was there to protect them. Because they are God's chosen people. And God is not going to let the Egyptians touch them. Very much like the mother hen, the mother bird protecting her eggs from the preys. Out of the hand of the Egyptians, that would be the prey, right? Coming after God's people, no way. God is defending them and protecting them. And what is important is Israel saw. It is very clear. They can actually see. Not only they see, they also experienced. And so the word see means I can see, I can know, I can experience, and they can see all the dead on the seashore floating around. They have gone through the sea, but not like the Egyptians. And thus Israel saw the great work. What do you mean the great work? Literally, the great work actually means the great hand of God. Literally, that's what it means, the great hand. And by work, it means that this is what the hand of God did. But the Hebrew is more vivid, right? It's very imagery. So work you cannot imagine, but hand, yes. the great hand that God did in Egypt. What does that tell us? The 10 miracles in Egypt, ending by the Passover, the death of the firstborn, and now by the Red Sea, I would believe the Gulf of Aqaba, that they were there in the Sinai Peninsula at the beach of Nuweiba. So and you can check this out. Nuweiba. And so that would be a seashore that they can encamp, the beach, and it is still in Egypt. Notice they have not gone out of Egypt yet, and this will give us a clue that Sinai is still in Egypt. And so when they crossed over, they saw everything God has done. And so what did they do? The people feared the Lord. Aren't you? Won't you be afraid? If God is on your side, nothing to be afraid. But if God is not on your side, that is a lot to be afraid, because this is the true and living God. And they believed. You mean they never believed before? Well, believe is not a one-time action, right? Believe means to be firm. It's aman. That is the Hebrew word. I know in Malay or in Arabic, we have the word aman, and we say it's peace, right? In Arabic. But aman means to be firm. To be firm, like when you put up a tent and you put tent peg into the ground and you trust the ground to be firm, not in the sand where it will come out, but firm in the ground that it will hold the tent down. That is the word believe. That you can trust, you can depend on the ground, that it won't move and the tent will fly away, right? That is what belief means. And they are believing they can depend on God and his servant Moses. And they can now see, don't complain to Moses, because Moses is with God, and God through Moses will do great things. And with this, they feared the Lord. And that's what God wants them to do. I think all in all, in this chapter, this was an experience of a lifetime. And you may think, right, after 10 miracles in Egypt, and with the death of the firstborn, now it's still in Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, and the armies of the Pharaoh died. And they can see that although by the eyesight there seems to be no way, God makes a way. Because God sees where they go and God is leading them. If God is leading them, why should they be fearful? There will always be a way, even where there seems to be no way. I think that the song by Don Moen is very nice, right? God will make a way. And God did. And through the sea to the other side, which I will call the Arabian Peninsula, and how God saved Israel, right? And the word save is a broad word. It is to deliver, to make Israel victorious, to fight against the Egyptians without having to fight. All of these words gave them help, gave them support, opened the way. Everything is this save. I guess in the Chinese is bao ga liao, right? In one word, it means everything. And God is this everything to Israel. So the challenge for us is God this everything to us? That we fear God and trust in him and be firm in the Lord. And with this, we end Exodus chapter 14.